Hey guys, welcome back to Cards and Comics, and today I've got a video showcasing my 1970s Hall of Fame graded PSA and SGC collection, mostly PSA. This collection is important to me because as I was progressing as a collector, I had a budget at all times, and I could afford more 70s cards. And when I was, when I collected vintage, and I consider myself more of a vintage collector, even though, as you can see, my background here, you can see I've got a wide variety of vintage and new cards. Um, so yeah, I mean, I definitely have space in my collection for both. However, the vintage cards speak more to me in general, and so when you're on a budget, you have a choice sometimes of, let's say, saving up and buying a big card or getting a lot of smaller cards. And in general, the smaller cards, when I was under a smaller budget, I mentioned this in a few other videos, I was around $300 a month was my budget for a lot of years. And so I could get 5 or 6 nice 70s cards, or I could get maybe 1 or 2 60s cards. And so I end up choosing 70s quite a bit. So we'll get started in 1970s. And one abnormality to start off with is I don't have a lot of 70 O-Pee-Chees. And so to start with, I collect both Topps and O-Pee-Chee, but the O-Pee-Chee is kind of a more of a sidebar of my collection. I don't make it a big focus, but I do look for 70s O-Pee-Chee cards whenever I can, and same way for 60s. They're gaining popularity and they're harder to find. So you won't see as many O-Pee-Chees, but you'll definitely see them sprinkled in and out, and I do have some pretty nice ones. If I do say so myself, I do think I have some cool ones. So starting in 1970, so here's my only O-Pee-Chee card in 1970, but it's a good one, and if you've seen my other Clemente video, you will see that I have the 70 O-Pee-Chee Clemente, PSA 8, and you can see the back of the 70. So starting out with the 70 O-Pee-Chee Clemente, and then going right into Topps. So my first Topps card I'll showcase here is a 70 Clemente 8.5. And just to show you the difference in backs between the two cards, there you go. I don't know, it's easier to see like this. But you can see one's a little more yellow and a little more dirty looking. The other one's a little more white. And that's very common with O-Pee-Chee. So moving on, I have a 1970 Johnny Bench PSA 8.5. And there you go. There's the back for anyone who likes backs. A little off center, but still within the tolerance. And I really love this card. It's one of my favorite Johnny Bench cards. It's the 68, 69, 70, 71 benches are just classic cardboard for me. I love every one of those cards. 1970 Reggie Jackson PSA 8. Yeah, you'll see a lot of 8.5s in this collection, and some 9s. So in the 50s, I got 7s and 8s mostly. In the 60s, I've got 8s and 8.5s. And then in the 70s, 8s, 8.5s, and 9s. So I do get some more 9s in the 70s. So there's the Reggie. I'm not going to show the back of every card, but just show this one is much better centered. Moving on, 70s Topps Ernie Banks 8.5. Again, I really, really dig. And we get this line here. I'm trying to prevent it from messing with you too much. An 8.5. So, again, my favorite grade. Next up is an 8.5 Carl Yastrzemski. Again, my favorite grade, and his cards have gone up, in my opinion, quite a bit, compared to what they were just a few years ago. Next up is a 70 Al Kaline in an 8.5. I don't think Kaline's cards are interesting to me because he's such a good player, but his cards are sometimes very expensive in some years, and then some years they're just really cheap. And so, and this year I believe he is not that expensive. Moving on to a 70s Billy Williams in a PSA 8. Next up, card I've had a lot of different grades right now. I just have an 8, um, but it's a Brooks Robinson, straight 8. Next up, here is my 8.5 Fergie Jenkins. Um, his cards are really cheap. Next up, 70 Rod Carew. And it's definitely an older grade. This is a really old flip. So, you could theoretically say it's could be a regrade. I don't know. It's a very nice card. And I love just having these nice 70s cards. Another 8.5, Jim Palmer. Classic pose on Mr. Palmer there, an 8.5. Next up, this card is, I think, really cheap. I've had this in 8s and 9s, both. But it's Raleigh Fingers, and it's his first card by himself. So it's, the first real Raleigh Fingers card, because his 69 rookie card has him on with 2 other players. Orlando Cepeda in an 8.5. Which I think Cepeda's cards, especially later years, are really cheap. And then a 1970s Santo, card number 670, so it's in the higher number series. This card sells really well. And again, I've said this before, a lot of card shows are in Chicago where Ron Santo cards sell really well. So this card is a lot more expensive than people think. So I love having Santo cards, and I have an 8. And you can see I didn't have many duplications in my 70s cards. I have pulled some of the doubles out to take to card shows to sell, but this was a good year. I don't have a ton of duplication. You'll see some duplication in some other years. All right, moving on to the set that most people, or year that most people love the most, 71. So starting with O-Pee-Chees, and so you see I've got more O-Pee-Chees in 71. So here's a 71 Bob Gibson PSA 8 O-Pee-Chee. This is a killer card, man. This is one of my favorite cards of all time, and this is just killer. You can see the back on the 71s have that second photo. Just beautiful yellow back. I mean, this is just, I love this card. I really do. I'm really happy I have it. It's one of the few years I don't have a Clemente O-Pee-Chee in the 70s. That card is insane. Here's another O-Pee-Chee. It's a Rod Carew PSA 7. It's a very well centered, and it's a nice 7. It's got some corner wear. And again, the cool back. And then next up is, I got a Hal McRae in here just because I kind of threw him in there, and I didn't, sometimes I just don't have the comments sorted out. Mostly I do, but I threw him in there. All right, next up is one of my few, I don't have many SGC cards, but here's one, Ted Simmons rookie card. Hall of Fame rookie card now, and it's a 7.5. And you can see the back difference, and a really different design. I mean, it's not even the same design for the back between O-Pee-Chee and Topps that year, which is really interesting. Besides a different color, a different type of photo and placement, and a very interesting way they did it. So Ted Simmons rookie card. Next up, a card that most people love, and I do too. It is a 1971 Thurman Munson SGC 88. Let you kind of look at it. I think it's nice. I mean, I know it's hard to see, but it doesn't have, I mean, you can just look at it. It does not have what I consider to be rough cuts or corner wear. The back is centered well enough, so you can see some of the corners on it. A little wear, maybe at the tips. It's got a shot at a straight 8. I don't know if I'm ever going to send it in. I don't know if I'm that brave. But I love the card, and I like just having, an SGC 88 Thurman Munson. It's a little off-center. This card is notoriously off-center due to its placement on the sheet. Next up is one of the big cards in the set, 71 Clemente. I know when I bought this card, or when I got this card, it was 100% cardboard lust. When I was, buying all my Clementes, I could not wait till I had this card. This was, one of my all-time, favorite Clementes. And when I got it in the 8 for the first time, it was Kind of angels went off in the background, and it was beautiful. 71 Willie Mays, and so obviously if you've seen my Mays collection, you've seen this card before. But I just want to have them in, to show the totality of my 70s collection. I do have a lot of the bigger cards like Mays and Clemente and some Aaron's. But one thing I am missing a little bit is Nolan Ryan, early Nolan Ryans. I do have some, but not all, and I think that is a piece of my collection I got to kind of fix. This card is insanely expensive, 71 Pete Rose. It's hard to find, hard to get graded, an 8, and I really love this card. Again, it's a difficult card to get, and I think most people, who collect the 71 set just know that that card is insane to try to find and get. Same way for this card, 71 Reggie Jackson. It's in the top tier cards in the set, and it's very, very difficult to get. It's a very cool card. I love the green and the black and just his uniform and the two bats. It's just such a cool card. So 71 Reggie Jackson PSA 8. Next up, 71 Nolan Ryan PSA. So this is where I mentioned that, yes, I do have some 70s Ryans, and this is one of them. Early 70s, I'd say. It's obviously a very big key card for Ryan. So I love this card, and I'm just super stoked. I got it last year before the prices went even more nuts. Here's one of the few doubles I do have. 71 Brooks Robinson PSA 8.5. So you'll notice in my 71s, I do not have many 8.5s. And for obvious reasons, these are very difficult cards to get 8.5s on. Anyone who collects a set knows that Brooks Robinson is one of the more difficult cards to find in an 8. So I feel very lucky to have an 8.5. It's very well centered. It's one of those cool cards I really... I never really thought I'd get an 8.5. I wasn't really looking for it, but when it came up and I kind of snagged it, I think I'm going to buy it now. That I thought was really cheap. And then you'll see the second version, PSA 7, right behind him. So this will be a card I'll eventually take to card shows and sell. Here is the Johnny Bench. This card has tremendously gone up in value. It's one of Bench's most expensive and key cards. And it's a beautiful card. I mean, it's hard to just, 71s, when they're nice, centered, and have great borders, are just amazing. Mr. Banks, I have it in a 7, and I want to get a better grade. I mean, I'm not 100% slave to grades, but, I do think I can find it a little bit better. But this card is very nice for a 7. It's got a little white here on this corner right there, and I think that's what got it into a 7 holder. Next up, Jim Palmer in an 8, and I mean, my goal is, so if you're wondering, why what my goal is I do want to have all the Hall of Famers and Hall of Fame rookie cards in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in an 8 or better for the 70s, 7 or better in the 60s, and 7 or better in the 50s. I do prefer the 8 and 8.5 grade, as you can see. Lou Brock, beautiful card. It's gone up in value quite a bit too. Next up is starting to get in some of the minor stars, but even these minor stars sometimes can bring a lot of money. And I don't say minor stars, but like, say, second tier Hall of Famers like Phil Niekro. I mean, I've seen this card jump up and go for hundreds of dollars before. It's just, some people just bid on these 71s like nuts. I mean, I've seen this card right here, the Jim Hunter, sell for some pretty crazy prices. And I've had it for quite a while. And I've never really, thought it was a key card, but, I've seen it sell pretty big. The Steve Carlton, Willie McCovey, and I really like this card of McCovey. I just think it's an awesome pose of him. And if I was a McCovey collector, this would be one of my favorite cards. I just think that's a really nice photo. And like I said, 71s have good photos, just classic looking cards. There's Tony Oliva. Cepeda, again, this card can go for some big bucks depending on the auction. There's Mazurowski, and this card won't bring big bucks, but still Hall of Famer. And he's a pirate. I do have doubles of that card. That's why he's in there. And then last but not least, Sparky Anderson. I believe this might be his rookie card. I haven't. I think it is actually. So, but yeah, Sparky Anderson. It's just a cool card. 70s goodness. And so that's my bulk of my 70s is really 71s in terms of just value. So that's 70 and 71, and we'll move on to 72. I think you'll find as I kind of put them back in the boxes here. Yeah, I mean 72s have really grown on me, especially this year with the Heritage set coming out. I've really gone to appreciate those cards a little bit more. As you know, I've gotten kind of when I first started collecting 70s, the 72 set was important because of one reason, because it's one of the years that I collect. My first real collecting set I ever did was I put together the 61 and the 72 Pirate team sets, because that's the year after they won the World Series, and so you got the World Series cards, and I felt like they were just kind of had the stats and everything. So and so that was my introduction to those sets. But I never really thought the designs were amazing, and now I kind of look at them, I'm like, wow, I don't know why I didn't think these were that great. So we'll start in O-Pee-Chee again. Here's my 90C Clemente. I don't have a straight 8. I need to get one. They're not that hard to find. And you can see the backs. And so as opposed to 71, where they went with a completely different design, this is basically the same design with just a little bit of a different color due to the difference in cardboard stock. Stain in the O-Pee-Chees. Harmon Killebrew, 7.5. Next up is another O-Pee-Chee. It is a Willie McCovey, 8. And so the 72 O-Pee-Chee set is definitely one of the easier sets to find of the O-Pee-Chee years. And so you can see I've got more in the 72 set than most years. There's a Reggie Jackson in an 8 in O-Pee-Chee. Here is a 72 O-Pee-Chee Tom Seaver, and I really like that card. So as you can see, my O-Pee-Chees they're harder to get. I mean, I don't want to say like, ooh, the O-Pee-Chees in 72 are easy, but you can find them a little easier. And you can see I've got some, and I don't care as much about the grades either, because I want the card. So a 7, 8, 8, and 5, whatever on O-Pee-Chees is good enough for me. All right, next up is my first Topps card, and it is the Clemente 8.5. I love this card for two reasons. One is I will show you the difference in backs, but the first thing is, the price tag when I bought this at a card show is still on it. So there you go. That's what I paid for this card whenever I bought it, and yeah, $225. I think that was a good deal. And then you can see the difference in backs right there. So yep, 8.5, 72 Clemente. Very, very happy with that card. There is your Yastrzemski 8.5 again, 72, and this card is just razor, and you can just see how nice that card is. It's like glowing, and it's really well centered. Again, that's the dripping wet gloss looking type of card. You can just see it. That card, I mean, if it didn't come out of a pack and into PSA, I don't. Then somebody, or it just came out of vending or something. That card is super pack fresh. So I just want to point that out. I love that card. Here's a Hall of Fame rookie card. So here's Carlton Fisk in a PSA 7. This card really hasn't gone up much in value. And I just think it's just out of sight, out of mind. People don't talk much about Fisk anymore. But he's still a Hall of Famer. Here is a Frank Robinson. So you start seeing some 9s. And so here's my first 9. And good player. And you'll see him again in the update set. So there's a 9 regular. Here's a Richie Allen. Richie Allen definitely could have been a Hall of Famer if he would have stayed the course. I think he got a little off the rails. And if you read a lot about Allen, and he was kind of some of the alcohol issues. So kind of a sad story, because if you talk to players, like Bob Uecker in his book talked a lot about that. Basically, Richie Allen was the best player he ever saw, and it's just kind of a shame that he couldn't stay the course and fulfill all his potential. But if you talk to players even from that time period, they'll say, Allen was just a stud. 72 Topps Raleigh Fingers 8. And again, that card is like a 10 or, well, maybe not anymore, but I mean, we're picking up for like 10 or 15 bucks at a time in an 8. First, here's another 9. Sorry, I have Jim Palmer. So, very cool card. Here's a definitely abnormality, a Topps 7.5. Sometimes I just pick them up if they're a good price, and sometimes these mid grades or half grade cards sometimes sell really cheap. Fergie Jenkins in an 8. Again, not an expensive card. Now, obviously, I didn't have these in order the way I would have liked. So here's my bench and a PSA 8. So you saw I've got the bench in 70, the 71 bench, and the 72 bench. So, these are some of the nicer bench cards. And, in all reality, bench cards almost in every year are collectible and people want them. He was just such a great player. So, I mean, but this is a very classic looking card. The 72 bench 8. Billy Williams 8. Again, not very expensive. Here's another Santo. Here's an 8.5. And again, like I said, every year Santo, if you go to Chicago, he sells really well. So here's the start of the Topps traded set. So here's a Steve Carlton 8. So this is going from the Cardinals to the Phillies. Probably the biggest mistake the Cardinals ever made. And, was trading Steve Carlton. It probably cost him some World Series titles in the late 70s. When they still had Gibson. I think that was a huge mistake. But you see that. And then there's Mr. Robinson again as a Dodger. So, and then he'll reemerge later on, as an Oriole. So, it's hard to believe that, that a guy this good was traded or moved around so many times in the 70s when players typically didn't move around much. So that's the 70s. And again, sorry this is going to be a long video, but I kind of want to get it all out there at once. I love these cards, and these are my favorite, some of my favorite cards I have. And I haven't showed them off yet just because, I wanted to have time to do this right, and have my collection, I wanted to, put the time and effort to make a video and just kind of show you the breadth of the collection I have, and not to say like, I've got, the best 70s collection of all time. It's just I've spent, a majority of my collecting life putting this collection together. And, as I move some cards around, I just wanted to share it with you guys. And, this is sort of why I wanted to start this whole channel is, I've moved around quite a bit, and, I had a collecting family back in Indiana, and I've kind of lost that a little bit here in New York. I don't have, the folks that I used to hang out with and set up shows, and I'm trying to set up shows more often. I just don't have as much time, and, it's just a different feel, when you had like 5 or 6 guys you collected with and went to shows with and set up shows with and went to nationals with and did all this stuff and collected together. And then to lose that, I felt like I've lost a little bit of the collecting community. And so I started a YouTube channel. The main goal is to kind of talk to collectors again and have these conversations I used to have when I, was collecting, back in Indiana with kind of my bros. And now, it's a little different. YouTube's not the easiest format to have good conversations, but I have, connected with some really cool collectors on here. And that is, for me, what was the goal. And so, my goal wasn't to monetize a channel and to make a lot of money. My goal was to honestly was to connect with collectors, make some friends, and talk about cards, because and that's what I do this for anyway. I'm not in this for monetary gains, I mean, that's great if it happens, but it's just, it's for me. I don't have like an outlet for friends, to go out and just hang out with friends all the time. And so if I get a chance to go to card shows and hang out with some folks that I know and I like, that's about as much as I get to do, because, with my work and family, it's just difficult to go out and hang out with friends. this gives me kind of an excuse to go do it. And, and it's definitely, a hobby. So, that's why I wanted to show the collection and kind of take some time to go through it. So moving on to 73, and again, you guys can edit out all these spiels and just go to the cards if you want to. But it's important to me. I want to make sure you understand, like this is like very personal to me, in terms of my collection and just like the years and years I put into it. And the pounding the pavement going to show. So, and that's why, I really wanted to just kind of have it out there on a video and just be like, here it is. This is like, 30 years of me collecting and this is what I've done. So we'll start in 73 with O-Pee-Chees, and there is 8 Willie Mays. Next up, and I know you probably have seen these. Here is an 8 Clemente, if you've seen some of the other videos, but I just want to kind of show I do have both the Peachy 8s in Mays and Clemente, which is awesome. And it's probably it is the only year I have like two of the big studs in one O-Pee-Chee set. There's a Carlton, and again, fun card. Next up is Bob Gibson, only a 7. I say only. Ted Simmons, now a Hall of Famer, and this is an 8. Don Sutton in an 8, an O-Pee-Chee, and finally Mr. Buddy Bell in a PSA 8. So a lot of 73, so it's probably my second biggest O-Pee-Chee collection in the 70s. Moving on down to the tops, and you'll see I have got some pretty strong grades in this year. Starting out with my Willie Mays an 8.5. And again, you may have seen it in an earlier video. And then my Clemente in a 9. And again, I graded this card, so this is kind of special to me. Is I bought this card, sent it to PSA, and it came back a 9. And it's the only 9 Clemente in my whole collection, and I graded it myself, so that makes me feel happy. Don Sutton 8.5. Again, not a huge card, but fun to have. Raleigh Finger 7. Again, I probably bought that card for $5 or $10. Moving on to some of the bigger hitters, here is Mr. Pete Rose in a PSA 8. Nice card. I like that card, and it's a good mover. If I go to card shows, this card as well will move along with that Pete Rose very easily. 73 Munson. People love this card. That 73 Munson. Super nice card. 73 is also when you saw some of the horizontal design. So here's Killebrew in an 8. And here's Frank Robinson, one of the first, horizontal cards. And this is just a cool card. And this is, again, a 9. So you're seeing, a few 9s sprinkled in. Here is a Fergie Jenkins 9. Here is an 8.5 Bob Gibson. Love that card. Here's Joe Morgan, and I got a 7. I actually sell a lot of Joe Morgan when I have him. People really like Joe Morgan. It's interesting when I go to card shows. Only a 7, and again, that was probably not a hugely expensive card. Here's your Yastrzemski in an 8. I'm in the Northeast now, and Yastrzemski sells really well. Tom Seaver 8.5. This card's gone up. All Seaver cards, fortunately went up after his passing. Willie Stargell. This is a really well-centered 8. Again, horizontal funness, and I have this card in multiples, so I've got my doubles and my 70 stack. Necro 8. Again, not an expensive card. Same way for this card. Cepeda 8. And then here is my Reggie Jackson 8. Remember, there was all these rumors that this card wasn't Reggie Jackson, or the photo wasn't Jackson, it was someone else. So it's interesting that there's all these rumors about that card. Al Kaline 8.5. And some of these cards I haven't seen in a while, because I don't just pull this box out and just go through it all the time, which I probably should. Just so I don't buy doubles as much. Kaline 8.5, and ending on a 73 Lou Brock. So my 73 collection is very large and in charge. It's because, again, the 73s are a very affordable set. Moving on to 74. And then, again, 74s, I have a huge amount because, again, 74s were very affordable. And so throughout the years, I just keep picking them up. Can't seem to say no to my 74s. So we'll start with the O-Pee-Chees. Now, I think you've heard me say this before, maybe not on other videos, but the hardest by far O-Pee-Chee cards to get in the universe are 74 O-Pee-Chees. They use some sort of like cheap paper that they fall apart, and they instead of cutting, they just almost like tear or ripple. They're horribly off-centered, so O-Pee-Chees and 74 are very tough. So I have focused on 74 O-Pee-Chees. I do search eBay for them all the time. Here is a Hank Aaron special, number 5, showcasing the 62 and 63 set for Hank Aaron. That's a 7. Here is a cool card, a 74 O-Pee-Chee Nolan Ryan, PSA 7. Here is a Willie Stargell and Reggie Jackson RBI leaders card, 74 O-Pee-Chee and a 7. Cool card, 2 Hall of Famers. Here's a very special card. It's just because it's an 8. It's a 74 O-Pee-Chee and an 8. And man, 8s are just super hard to find. I mean, it's hard to find O-Pee-Chee cards above a 7. Next up is a Dave Parker rookie card and a PSA 7. Cool card. This card is really hard to find, and it's gotten very popular as people realize these 74 O-Pee-Chees are really tough. Here's probably my shining, probably my second most, coolest O-Pee-Chee behind another card, but the Ryan, the Schmidt, and an 8 special card, special grade. Just this card is really cool, and the 74 Schmidt is one of my favorite cards just because it's him by himself on his first card. Next up is the Thurman Munson and an SGC 88. Again, the O-Pee-Chee, and then the coolest 74 I've got is my Dave Winfield rookie card, O-Pee-Chee, and a PSA 7, 74 O-Pee-Chee, and that is a super nice card. And then I've got kind of a team checklist. I threw it in there. It's just kind of a common, but the 74 O-Pee-Chee checklist are kind of cool. If you've never seen one, that's what they look like. All right, next up, if you've seen my Aaron video, you'll see I've got an 8.5 74 Topps number 1 card, the Hank Aaron Home Run King card. It is one of my favorite all-time cards. I just think that card is special, and look at the centering and just how awesome that card is. Just love it. Next up is one of the special cards, and so you saw the O-Pee-Chee just had 2. The Topps has got 4. A very interesting difference there. Again, that's a 9, so that's why that card is very cool. All right, moving into the actual cards, the player cards and Topps. Joe Torre, PSA 8. So it's kind of the first time you've seen Joe Torre. I've kind of haven't collected him too much, but you'll see him more often as I kind of pick up more Hall of Famers. There's the Ryan, another big card in this set, and a PSA 8. Very old holder there. Frank Robinson, PSA 8. Lou Brock, PSA 8. Oh, sorry, that's a 9. Lou Brock, PSA 9. Here's a horizontal card, as you saw, starting in 73. And this is one of the really cool Tom Seaver cards. It's an old grade, but I love that card, 74. And I'll pick it up whenever I get a chance. Cepeda in a straight 8. Willie Stargell in the straight 8. This 74 Stargell is actually pretty tough. It's tougher than you think. There is a cool Carlton Fisk in a straight 8. Again, horizontal coolness there. There's Mr. Jackson in a straight 8. So, for whatever reason, I just got tons of straight 8s in 74 when, in reality, the 8.5s and 9s aren't that expensive. Brooks Robinson. I guess I just didn't make it a real priority there. Tony Perez in an 8. Another horizontal, a cool Ron Santo. I think this is the last card of Santo as a Cub. So it's just kind of a cool card. Next up, Mr. Yastrzemski in an 8. There's the base. There's the Mike Schmidt. Sorry. So you can see I've got both the tops and the O-Pee-Chee in a straight 8. Very cool. There's Thurman Munson and an 8.5. Hey, look at that. My first 8.5 in 74. And ending on a PSA 9 Juan Marichal traded. So there you go. That is the 74s. Moving on up to 75. And so this is my collection gets very thin after 75. I kind of took the same kind of stance that a lot of dealers take is you talk to a lot of dealers, they'll say like 75 is sort of the last vintage year that they actually will buy or collect. Now I think the 76 set is really cool and has some really cool cards, but you'll hear dealers say that quite often that 75 is their last vintage set they'll pick up. Some say 79, some say 80 because of the Ricky Henderson, but when I was first doing vintage, it was like after 75, everything was considered like, too modern for the vintage guys to collect. All right, so starting at 75 O-Pee-Chee, here is a killer 75 O-Pee-Chee Hank Aaron. One of my favorite cards, and just, it's a killer looking card there. Moving on to the 75 O-Pee-Chee George Brett, and a 7, but this card's tough, and, here's the back. Again, that kind of whiter looking back. Yeah, this card's gone kind of nuts. And an 8. I think the 7s are still very collectible. Here is an O-Pee-Chee Tom Seaver in an 8. A friend of mine had the full set graded. Kid you not. 8 or better. Yeah. Just nutsoid. And then there's a Schmidt in a 7. And again, they're very common for them to be off center like that. Starting in the regular set, here is a 75 O-Pee-Chee, Topps, Robin Yount rookie card in an 8. Love the Robin Yount rookie. Here is a 75 Pete Rose 8.5. That card has gone nutsoid. 75s have really gone up in value just in general, so I just want to point that out. That there's a mini, so that's a Nolan Ryan 75 mini in a 7. Here is a 75 Joe Morgan in a 9. One of the few 9s. And not last but not least, 75 8.5 SGC Johnny Bench. And then in my little display up here, I'll grab it real quick. You can see I've also got an O-Pee-Chee Hank Aaron. So I've got both the Topps and the O-Pee-Chee Hank Aaron. I do think these O-Pee-Chee cards look really nice in SGC holders. So I will say that for sure. O-Pee-Chee cards definitely look good in that black tuxedo holder. And then I'll move on to my last kind of 76 or 79. Not a big pile. You can see that right there. So we'll start here with 76 Tom Seaver, O-Pee-Chee, and a PSA 8. Very solid card. And the backs start to get, not quite as different, just a little wider. But definitely cool. And then this card is so awesome. I've had it multiple times, even though it's really rare. This is due to its spacing on the sheet, it's always diamond cut. I'll say this. At one point, I was at a card show in Chicago. A dealer had this in a PSA 9, and he wanted $450 for it at one point, and I didn't buy it. And that's one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda type deals. I've kicked myself forever. But I do have an 8, and I'll never get rid of it because I love that card. It's one of my favorite cards. Here is the Aaron in an 8.5. Just a killer card last year. There's your full stats, or as full of the stats you're going to get on a Hank Aaron card. But there you go. My 76 Hank Aaron 8.5. There's my Eckersley rookie card in an 8. Very nice for the grade. 76 Nolan Ryan. Classic card. One of my favorite cards to get because it's so fluid. Same way for this card. You can just sell this card every day at a card show. because when it was 20, 30, 40 bucks, it was just like you could sell them all day long. Here's a 9 Willie McCovey. These 9s and 76 are not very expensive until you get to a player like the next one up, the Tom Seaver. But here's Joe Morgan in a 9. This is obviously a 9 Tom Seaver to go with my O-Pee-Chee 8. I just very happy I picked this up before the prices kind of went nuts. Brooks Robinson. I always thought this card was really cool, just the color combinations and just fun card. Tony Perez in an 8, and my last 2 cards is there is a 77 George Brett in an 8, and I really need to get more George Bretts after 76. I need to get the 78, 79, the 80. I need to focus a little more on George Brett because he is very popular, and I loved George Brett when I was a kid. So I just would love to have more of his cards. And here is a Bruce Bochy rookie card from 79. So in one of the videos, he is probably going to be a Hall of Famer. And so this is his rookie card, and I have it in a mint 9. Kind of early spec on this card. So there you go. Long video, I know. Hopefully you guys hung in there. I kind of got a little long-winded there, but I wanted to kind of explain some things. But there's my 70s Hall of Fame rookie card and graded PSA SGC collection. Hope you enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments, what you thought. And I'll do some more collection videos in the future, and I'll let you know. Probably do 1990s inserts pretty soon, and I've got a big collection of them as well. So see you next time. Bye.